angehenden Konferenzen von Ihnen erhalten auch aus. Und hier sind wir. Wir haben wieder ein riesiges Programm zusammengestellt. Wahnsinnig viele tolle Speaker eingeladen. Und ja, ich freue mich. Ich hoffe, Sie auch. Was ist in letzter Zeit passiert? Ausnahmsweise gab es mal wieder richtig Neuigkeiten zum Thema Java. Das ist immer so ein bisschen merkwürdig, weil es ist eine Konferenz, die irgendwo Java oder die Java Virtual Machine oder die Java Plattform, wie auch immer wir das nennen mögen, quasi eigentlich als Grundlage betrachtet und hernimmt. Und gleichzeitig redet man eigentlich überwiegend über was anderes. Warum? Weil erstens so viel passiert eigentlich im Java-Bereich normalerweise nicht unbedingt. Und auf der anderen Seite, es funktioniert, es ist da. Und das ist gut. Es ist eine Plattform für Technologie und für Business, ja, die einfach da ist und die funktioniert und die gar nicht so viel Aufmerksamkeit braucht, ja, wie früher, wo man irgendwie jedes kleine Release und jede kleine Bibliothek irgendwie abgefeiert hat mit einer extra Session auf so einer Konferenz wie hier. Und trotzdem, wie gesagt, jetzt sind doch eine ganze Menge ziemlich gewichtiger Dinge passiert. Und ich denke natürlich auch eine Konferenz wie hier ist natürlich eine klasse Gelegenheit, ja, das zu diskutieren, das zu bewerten, ein Gespür dafür zu kriegen, was bedeutet das für mich, für meine Karriere, für meinen Kunden, für meine Firma, was auch immer. Also, Java. Man hat sich hier jetzt eine Release-Cadence verordnet. Das heißt, also wir wollen jetzt nicht irgendwie jahrelang warten, bis irgendwann ein neues Release kommt und was wieder verschoben wird und nochmal verschoben wird. Und dann gibt es Streit, bevor es wieder verschoben wird und so weiter und so fort. Sondern man hat sich jetzt vorgenommen, dass man halbjährlich rauskommt. Alle halbe Jahr ein neues Java-Release. Und das bedingt ein bisschen so eine komische, für manche Leute irritierende Nummerierung. Ja? Das heißt, also jetzt ist 9 rausgekommen im September und plötzlich wird das nächste Release 18.3 heißen. Das heißt also, es wird im März 2018 erscheinen. Und dann kommt 18.9, 19.3 habe ich doch, genau, ist richtig, ja. Und so weiter und so fort. Ja. Komische Nummerierung, haben sich im Netz auch einige schon drüber aufgeregt. Trotzdem aber ist es erstmal das Commitment, wir wollen releasen, wir wollen Tempo in die Sache reinbringen, wir wollen vor allem zeitbasiert releasen und nicht unbedingt nur Feature Java-Welt, ja, die aber sozusagen schon, ja, ich sag mal, in erster Linie der Sphäre sozusagen der technischen inkrementellen Verbesserungen auch zuzuordnen sind, wenn sie gleich auch sehr, sehr bedeutend sind. Unabhängig davon, und jetzt schwenke ich so ein bisschen weg vom Thema Java, weil das auch so ungeheuer wichtig ist. Ja. Es gibt in vielen Stellen eben, ich sag mal, neue Ansätze der Softwareentwicklung, der Produktentwicklung. Ja. Und ich glaube, man kann sich das nicht genau genug angucken, man sollte es sich immer wieder angucken. Und ich selber finde da einen Artikel von Werner Vogels, dem CTO von Amazon Web Services, wirklich einen ganz, ganz fantastischen Text, den man wirklich fast mehrmals lesen muss, um das wirklich sich klar zu machen, was das bedeutet, wie die über die letzten 10, 11, 12 Jahre lang Amazon Web Services aufgebaut haben. Und ich will kurz ein kleines Zitat herausgreifen, wo es darum geht, oder wo Werner Vogels in seinem Blog schreibt: The evolution of Amazon S3 could best be, jetzt läuft er von meinem Bildschirm rum, could best be described as starting off as a single engine Cessna plane, but over time the plane was upgraded to a 737, then a group of 747s, all the way to the large fleet of Airbus 380 that it's now. All the while we were refueling in mid-air and moving customers from plane to plane without them even realizing it. Das ist natürlich jetzt ein sehr technokratisches Bild, es geht um große Flugzeuge, die immer größer werden, aber es ist schon krass, also wenn man die Metapher jetzt ernst nimmt, ja, behauptet er tatsächlich, also sie haben sozusagen, ohne dass der Kunde es gemerkt, eigentlich permanent so viele Teile ausgetauscht, dass eben aus einem kleinen einmotorigen Flugzeug ein großer Airbus 380 geworden ist. Nicht nur das, sozusagen auch eine ganze Flotte daran. Was dahinter steckt, ist eben sozusagen dieses Bild, vielleicht kennen Sie das, das ist von den Spotify-Produktteams, die halt auch nochmal ganz klar sagen, naja, wenn du was Großes vorhast, wie zum Beispiel ein Auto bauen, ja, dann baue nicht erstmal so ein Rad und dann nochmal, ich weiß nicht genau, so eine Achse oder so ein Chassis und dann noch eine Karosserie dazu und erst ganz am Ende, wenn du die Teile zusammensetzt, hast du irgendwie ein sinnvolles Produkt, was jemand sinnvollerweise verwenden kann, sondern geh lieber so vor, dass du sagst, ich will ein Fahrzeug bauen, ja, und weil du weißt, dass du nicht gleich das Auto bauen kannst, ja, dann fängst du halt mit dem Skateboard an. Und dann gehst du über so einen Kinderroller und so weiter und so fort. Natürlich ist das Skateboard nicht das Ziel gewesen, aber es ist schon mal ein Fahrzeug. Ja. Es hat Räder und ich kann mich damit schneller fortbewegen als zu Fuß. Ja. Und dieser Ansatz, dieser Minimal Viable Product Ansatz, ja, ich glaube, das ist unheimlich wichtig. Das ist eine Geschichte, die wir aus der Startup-Welt schon lange kennen. Ja, aber die, glaube ich, auch in klassischen Großunternehmen, mittleren Unternehmen auch, ich sag mal, wirklich beherzigt werden sollte, durchdacht werden sollte. Und nicht zuletzt steht es direkt im agilen Geiste, ja, dem Kunden eigentlich von Anfang an was Aussagekräftiges, was Nützliches, etwas, was er versteht und worauf er Feedback geben kann, zu geben. Ja. Und daher, wie gesagt, denkt immer dran, Skateboard bauen. Noch ein Zitat nochmal von Werner Vogels, und das ist auch nochmal sehr, sehr interessant. Er schreibt nämlich auch in seinem Text: It is important to realize that it is hard to predict what certain priorities are for our customers until they have the service in their hands and actually start building with it. This is why we deliver new services often with a minimal feature set and allow our customers to help drive the roadmap for extending the service with new features. Und das ist unheimlich wichtig, weil die haben teilweise war es ja schon fast frech, also wer sich viel mit Amazon Web Service beschäftigt hat, teilweise war es ja schon fast frech, wie rudimentär neue Services dort funktioniert haben. Ja? Und ich weiß, also auch in meinem Umfeld haben sich manche Leute gewundert, warum machen die das? Und ich fand das manchmal auch ein bisschen merkwürdig, und es sich klar zu machen, die haben wirklich erstmal eine Idee rudimentär implementiert, und weil sie einfach viele User haben, haben sie gesagt, jetzt gucken wir mal, welche Honigbienen sozusagen sich jetzt hier einfinden. Das heißt also, was die User, was die Entwickler damit machen und wie sie das nutzen, ob sie es überhaupt annehmen. Und dieses Feedback, diese Resonanz, die entsteht, ja, wenn ich etwas in den Raum reingebe und dann gucke, was kommt eigentlich zurück, ja, das aufzunehmen und daraus versuchen, vernünftige Schlüsse zu ziehen. Und erst dann, wenn ich wirklich signifikanten Anhaltspunkt habe, dass hier wirklich was Größeres zu erwarten ist, ein größerer Nutzen zu generieren ist, erst in diesem Moment wird überhaupt erst richtig investiert oder richtig entwickelt. Ja? Und das ist eigentlich hochinteressant. Das heißt, hier geht nicht einer raus und sagt, ich habe eine wahnsinnig gute Produktidee und wir gehen es raus, wir bauen dieses Produkt fix und fertig und dann erst releasen wir es den Kunden und dann floppt es vielleicht hinterher. Dann habe ich ziemlich viel Geld, ziemlich viele Ressourcen im Vorfeld in den Sand gesetzt. Ja. Die haben sich vorgetastet, haben wirklich auf fast freche Art und Weise rudimentäre Kleinigkeiten released, ja, um zu verstehen, passiert da was, wird das angenommen und erst dann, wenn es wirklich, wie gesagt, eine positive Resonanz gab und genügend Anhaltspunkte dafür gab, dass man es machen sollte, wird wirklich dieser Service irgendwie ausgebaut. Vielleicht auch noch mal ganz kurz, jetzt kleiner Gedankensprung, auch die Firma Uber, ja, ihr kennt ja auch, immer viel in den Medien gewesen, ja, man muss sich das einfach klar machen, man schätzt, die ist ja das noch privat, das ist nicht börsennotiert, und man schätzt, die hat ungefähr eine Marktkapitalisierung vergleichbar mit BMW, also irgendwie so roundabout 60 Milliarden US-Dollar, ja, das heißt also keine Kleinigkeit, kein kleiner Startup, ja, sondern ein heftiger Wert, der da zumindest Stand jetzt geschaffen worden ist. Ja. Und wenn man sich da anguckt, was die haben, wie ihr wisst ja, sie haben eigentlich selber gar keine Fahrer, sie haben keine Autos, im Endeffekt haben sie eigentlich nur Software. Ja, und natürlich Marketing und Customer Service und so weiter. Was die aber infrastrukturtechnisch gemacht haben, ist halt, dass sie sich eigentlich verlassen drauf. Die sagen, okay, jeder hat ein Device in der Tasche. Ja, dort ist Geopositionierung und Maps und so weiter irgendwie alles drauf. Ja? Also alles eigentlich Dienste, die ich von jemand anders nutze. Fürs Messaging nehmen die Google. Fürs Payment nehmen die dann Software-as-a-Service-Anbieter Braintree. Mandrill ist für Billing, also Rechnungsstellung und so weiter. Und last but not least, natürlich hosten die alles in der Amazon Cloud. Warum ich das erzähle, also das ist jetzt natürlich sehr holzschnittartig, ja, aber das sind so die einfachen Informationen, die öffentlich zugänglich sind. Warum ich das erzähle, ist eben, wenn diese Firma im klassischen Enterprise-Sinn gesagt hätte, wir wollen von Anfang an unsere Software aufbauen, und zwar selber, die würden heute noch Mitarbeiter suchen. Das ist völlig unmöglich in der heutigen Welt, dieses Tempo zu entfachen. Ja. Und die haben sich gesagt, zack, wir nehmen einfach die Dienste, die da sind, ja, stöpseln zusammen, Web-APIs sind das Thema. Das heißt natürlich nicht, dass sozusagen dass Sie alle jetzt irgendwie in dieser Form agieren und Systeme aufbauen sollten. Das heißt aber nur, schauen Sie sich um, gucken, was passiert. Da gibt es einige da draußen, die Software in völlig anderer Art und Weise bauen und entwickeln, als das traditionellerweise im sogenannten Enterprise-Umfeld der Fall gewesen ist. Es geht um den Wandel. Sie haben es schon oft gehört und manchmal nervt es vielleicht auch, wenn darüber geredet wird, aber ich möchte einfach darauf hinweisen, dieser Wandel ist und bleibt einfach ungeheuer wichtig. Dazu möchte ich Ihnen doch ganz kurz mein Lieblingsplakat zeigen. Da ging es auch um Wandel, das war irgendwo Ende der 1920er Jahre. Der Tonfilm kam. Ja? Und die klassische Filmindustrie und vor allem natürlich auch die beteiligten Musiker und so weiter und so fort haben gesagt, Tonfilm ist Kitsch, Tonfilm ist Einseitigkeit. Hier noch ein toller Text. Seine Konservenbüchsenapparatur klingt kellerhaft, quietscht, verdirbt das Gehör und ruiniert die Existenzen der Musiker und Artisten. Also durchaus besorgte Bürger oder besorgte Musiker, besorgte Künstler, die sagen, diese Disruption macht uns den Markt kaputt. Aber mal ehrlich, will einer von uns rückblickend auf dieser Seite der Geschichte stehen? Gucken Sie sich Wandel an, gucken Sie sich, auch wenn die Sachen sind, manchmal ein bisschen schwierig zu verstehen sind, auch wenn sie manchmal überraschend sind. Ja. Die Welt verändert sich und Disruption hat es eigentlich immer gegeben, an vielen Stellen. Nur sind die Einschläge jetzt ein kleines bisschen heftiger momentan durch die breite Digitalisierung. So, das war's von meiner Seite aus, sozusagen die kleine Vorrede. Jetzt vertiefen wir das Ganze nochmal und ich freue mich sehr, Ihnen jetzt den ersten Keynote-Sprecher ankündigen zu dürfen. Der Titel der Keynote ist It's a Small World After All, How Thinking Small is Changing Software Development Big Time. Sander ist Agile Thinker, Agile Writer, Agile Speaker und ja, I would just say, give him a warm hand for his keynote. Thank you very much.
I promise not to cough, sorry. So, thank you all for being here. It's a big crowd. I just want to start with saying hi to my team, who seem to be watching the live stream somewhere. So, hi guys at Anva. They're happy with that. So, I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff, and I only have 40 minutes. So I'm going to do this really, really quick. So there's a chance of urgency already, right? So this is me. I'm Sander. I'm from the Netherlands. And as you can see with my last name, I'm double object-oriented. I'm a programmer, basically. That's what I am. And I'm a dad of 3 kids. One of them is in an airplane almost today, flying his girlfriend to Sofia. So that's a new event in my life. I'm currently, as an independent consultant, the CTO of a company that creates software for the insurance market called Anva. I used to be the CTO of an insurance company. Before that, I worked at a small company called Capgemini. I think they have like 200,000 people employed around the world. And I used to be one of their Agile global thought leaders. This is my website, my email address. So if you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to ask. So, a couple of weeks ago, see, I'm an old guy, right? I'm older than most of you, if I can sort of, although there's quite a few bold people in here. So I'm an old guy, and I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan. Now, when I bought this album, Led Zeppelin 3, that must have been like in 1978, 1979 or something like that. And there was no internet back then, right? We didn't have internet. We didn't have email. We didn't have mobile phones. I had 2 channels on the TV. My parents had that actually, on a black and white TV. Now on this album, there's a song, the 9th song, called Brunjauer Stomp. I hope you can all read this. And I was always wondering what that was. And I couldn't figure that out until we got the internet, right? Until Wikipedia actually solved my problem. That was 20 years later, right? So it took me 20 years to figure out what this little village was. So it's a village. It's actually a retreat in Wales somewhere. So it's this small brick house. And the Led Zeppelin members lived there for quite a while and wrote a couple of songs there. And it took me even longer to figure out where it was, because I didn't have a map of Wales. Who does, right? And especially not one that has these very little places in there. So it took until Google Maps came out that I could actually look it up, where it was, right? And I could even see the satellite pictures. See, it's up there, right? The Brunjauer retreat. And I wanted to visit that, being a bit Led Zeppelin fan. Now, I was in Wales a couple of weeks ago, so I actually went there. See how happy I looked? This is how technology changed over the last 30 years, right? We didn't have anything 30 years ago, right? I didn't have a mobile phone, etc., etc. So that's how technology is changing. Now, the thing is, technology is changing a lot faster than you think. It's actually, Sebastian mentioned really some great examples, because technology is changing the world. You guys are actually changing the world. You don't realize that when you type away at Java. Well, I write Java as well, so I can make jokes about Java. I will do that eventually. So you don't realize that all the time, but we are, as developers, we are changing the world. We are making this all possible, right? So what are we doing? Well, you know this one, right? This is Moore's Law. Moore's Law says that the number of transistors in an integrated circuit doubles approximately every 2 years. Now you think, so what? This is just a linear line. It isn't. It isn't linear at all. It's actually very much exponential. Let's see, it goes like this, right? That means the possibilities that we get every 2 years are growing exponentially. And we are using that. We are using that to invent new technologies, invent self-driving cars. I wrote an article last night from a vice president of, I think, General Motors, who said, you should be aware that you are going to sell your cars within now and 5 years. Because there will be modules that drive themselves, and we will just sit in it, no human interaction, because insurance companies will figure out that accidents by 99.9% are caused by humans, right? That is the way the world is going to change. And it's going faster and faster. Look at this one. Who had one of these? I did. I had a Commodore 64 before that, by the way. And I still have it, and it still runs, right? But this was my first professional computer. That was in, I think, 1981, right? It had 16K onboard RAM. 16K, guys. And we programmed against that. Well, not in Java, though, but we did program against it. A floppy drive, which half of you don't even know what it is. was still optional, right? And if you would buy a hard drive, it had 64K bytes. A single picture I just took of you guys is like 5 megabytes, right? It doesn't even fit the hard disk in this computer. That's 1981. Now, in 2006, something else changed. Amazon created a scheme. By the way, the story about that they did that because of Christmas and that they had lots of additional space left because at Christmas they needed much more hardware, that's not true. It's the other way around, actually. They actually created all this hardware as a commercial project. And they launched the EC2 back in 2006. That made new stuff possible. That made stuff possible that we couldn't dream of before, because we were now able, even though we are small companies, to run software on hardware that is somewhere else. So we don't have to buy all this hardware anymore. That means the computing power that we have increases more and more and more and more. The company I now work for is deploying all its software in production on a machine somewhere in Frankfurt at Amazon, or in Ireland. I don't really know the difference because I don't see where it goes. It doesn't run on the machines in our company, right? And that changes perspective. To give you an example of that is Microsoft, who is also a big cloud vendor, are helping biologists and scientists from the medical profession to help solve cancer, because basically figuring out cancer is a computational problem. And they have the vast computing power to help solve this issue, right? Now that is a big change. To give you one more example, this particular graph, it's the Dutch Fintech landscape. So these are all the companies that work in finance, in IT, in the Netherlands alone. There must be around 3,000, right? Now, if I was a bank having millions and millions of lines of COBOL, or Java, or C, or whatever language, having to compete with very small companies that don't even have their own hardware, that have half a dozen programmers and are writing similar software to what we do, that would scare me as a bank. But the funny thing is, I'd read an interview last week with the CEO of one of the largest banks in the Netherlands, and he said, well, basically, the biggest threat he sees is Amazon. It's the Amazons, the Googles, the Apples, who likely are going to invest in banking as well, right? So there's whole new industries coming out of our traditional brick and mortar industries, and that is changing the world. And if you think, well, it'll go by, it won't. It won't. This will affect all of you every day. And I'll try to explain to you what it does. So first of all, I have to figure out where it goes wrong, right? Traditionally, we build a lot of software, right? We add feature to feature to feature to feature. And the problem is, especially if you have a product owner on your team, right? They're having you pounding out new features every day and not minding the quality. Because you have to consider the question about whether to increase the quality of your code or to add new features. Now, if there's a product owner or a client or whoever is in charge, they will say, oh, please write the next new feature, because that makes money, right? Increasing quality doesn't. And this is what happens. You know this cartoon in Germany? Probably not, because you're very silent. So this is a great Czech cartoon by two neighbors venturing on new projects every episode. Impossible projects usually, so in the first episode, they're making a fireplace out of wood. Not a very good idea, but they'll solve the issues along the way and add new features to the things they're building. At the end of every episode, and think of this as your project, the whole thing explodes, right? This will happen to your code bases as well. It doesn't mean it happens right away. It could happen next year, it could happen in 15 years, but it will happen. Because eventually, you also will have chosen to add new features every day instead of increasing the quality. And that's what's happening, right? And you get too much dependencies. This particular slide is a landscape. It's a systems landscape. Every rectangle here is a landscape. The biggest one, of course, is the pink rectangle there, called SAP CRM. And all these lines in there are interfaces. Which basically means if they change a single one of these systems, they have to look at all the other systems as well. It takes them 7 weeks to get a new version of this platform out. Every quarter, at most, because that's the cycle they can have. And the thing is, we are going to move towards landscapes that consists of only very small parts. Very small pieces of software written by very, very small teams in very, very short cycles. Putting it out into production as fast as you can. And still, if you think that's not going to affect you, it will. Because if you're not doing this, your competitor will do that. And they will outpace you. And you will be gone. And then you have to work for the competitor. I don't know. Anyway, so what is happening? It's basically 4 things. First of all, we are going to move away from projects. We will. I hate projects. And we will move into minimal viable projects. Well, Sebastian already explained that, so I can do that really briefly, right? And then we're going to have even shorter cycles. Who of you is using an agile approach? I probably could better ask who of you isn't, but since only half of you raises their hands, I don't dare to. Well, I use an agile approach, and I'm actually moving beyond that agile approach. I'm trying to explain that to you in a second. The third thing is that our teams will grow smaller and smaller. So you're probably aware of the fact that most people think that if you do Scrum, who of you does Scrum? Grow over it. Anyway, if you do Scrum, no, just kidding, not. If you do Scrum, most people say, well, teams usually have like 7 plus or minus 2 people, or 6 plus or minus 3, which is basically the same thing. And I'm going to tell you, teams will be smaller. That's my expectation, my personal expectation. And the last thing is, we will build smaller and smaller components. So as you can see, everything becomes smaller. And if you do that, you move eventually into something that I tend to call the continuous culture, which is basically the title of a new book I'm writing together with my girlfriend, hence the heart, right? And I'm a sweet guy. So anyway, so let's start off the first one, right? Let's start with a minimal viable product. Actually, I'm going to use a picture you've already seen this morning. Not this one, but the next one. And this one is a very interesting one. This is called the Cynefin framework. It's written by Professor Snowden from Bangor University in Wales, and it basically explains why we have been all wrong in this field for the past 50 years. So let's start with the simple zone. The simple zone says, well, basically, if you have some cause, the effect will be immediately describable. You can actually find it, implement it right away, done. Those are the simple problems. We have done those already in the 80s, right? The next zone is called the complicated zone. And it basically says there is a cause and an effect which seems to be sort of aligned. If you think about it long enough, you will find a solution and you will be able to plan that and build that. Right? You sense it, you analyze it, and you respond to the cause. Right? And then you can create a project. This is where most of us think we are. And we have never been in this zone. I'm trying to explain to you. We have always been in the complex zone. Now the complex zone says, yes, your cause and effect might be in the same space, probably, but we don't know how to get there, right? Because everything changes all the time. Our teams change, people go away, people come in, the technology changes, you create some new frameworks, you use some new frameworks. Oh, there's even better ones, let's use that one. Customers change their mind, they do that all the time. So everything is constantly changing around you. That basically means in IT, we cannot say, we're here now, we need to be there, let's plan it and do it. That has proven to be impossible. So the whole thing about doing projects, the whole project metaphor, let that go, please. It's like Frozen, right? Let it go. Let it... No, I can't sing. I try to do it all the time, and then guys in my team say, don't sing, please program. And then I stop singing, right? The only thing you can do is say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take the next step. Make a choice. Try it out. Figure out whether that works. If it works, we can continue in the same direction. If it doesn't, we have to adjust. We have to adjust all the time. You do that all the time. Even without noticing it, you do that, right? That means, since we are in the complex zone, that the whole project metaphor goes down the drain, because it's not plannable what we do. This is the wrong industry to plan those stuff, right? And all those people comparing software development with building houses, it's the wrong metaphor. But even with houses, they're incomplete. I can tell you long stories about building houses with terrible outcomes and stuff, but it doesn't work either in building houses. And the next zone, which is the chaotic zone, let's just say, hopefully you're not there. If you are, quit your job. This is basically the zone that says, you know what, there is no pattern, right? A lot of research projects are like this. We don't know where we are. We know where we are. We know sort of where we want to get. The only thing we can do is, well, just try something, see what happens, and then try again. This is even worse, right? Hopefully you're in the complex zone, but you are not. None of you is actually in the complicated zone. That means that the whole thing about the iron triangle, managing projects, a project must be on time, on budget, with the required functionality, it doesn't work. Don't do this. Don't do projects, right? It doesn't work in earnestly. Stop creating these ridiculous planning sheets. They don't work. They have never worked. There was a public inquiry in the Netherlands by Parliament about failing IT projects in the government. And they just figure out, you know what, we're just going to look at the biggest ones. And they figured out that there were 37 projects that had failed. Those were the biggest projects government had did over the past 20 years in the Netherlands. They all failed. That's terrible, right? And they all did this. So what should you do, right? So here's Sebastian's picture. And this is what happens, right? The thing is, you should start small. If you have to implement 100 features, go to the client, talk to the client and say, okay, what's the most important one? Pick that up and ask the client whether he wants the skateboard version, the car version, the bicycle version. What version do you want? Because this one takes 2 days. It's not as fancy as the other ones, but it takes 2 days. The other ones take 30 days. And are a lot more fancy, but a lot more expensive. Also, in the remaining 28 days, there's nothing else we can do than build a single feature. Instead, we could have built 14 skateboards for your next feature, right? That's the way you should go. You should live off a roadmap, not by a plan, right? Planning is good. Plans are wrong. That's basically the idea. So just put everything on a roadmap or a backlog, and just pick up the first one. That's all you need to do, right? All the other stuff is fluff. And there goes Scrum down the door, by the way. So the thing is, what you should do, and this is something I teach my teams all the time, is every time a product owner comes up to you, ask him the question, do you need this now? Because if you don't, there is something else that we probably need now that we need to build first in the skateboard version. Come back to me when this is the most important one. And it seems so logical. Still, most companies have a hard time figuring this out. And it's not that hard. It's just saying to your product owner, is this the most important thing we can do now? And if it isn't, don't do it. Right? Also, it means you can stop estimating. That's a good thing, right? Do you like estimating? What do you do? Do you use planning poker cards? Or do you do t-shirt sizing? Or just function points, or what? You know what I do? I do nothing. You know how happy that makes me? Way more happy than you guys all estimating, right? The thing is, if you have enough work items, let's call them work items instead of stories, the law of large numbers applies. Now, the law of large numbers says, it's a theorem that describes the result of performing the same experiment a large number of times, right? According to the law, the average of the results obtained from a large number of trials should be close to the expected value. That makes you think, right? This is simple math. Let's say you have 100 work items, or stories, or epics, or use cases, or whatever you might have. And you start estimating them on a scale from 1 to 5. What do you think the result will be after having estimated 100 of them? It will be, if you have a scale from 1 to 5, it will be very close to 300. Does that surprise you? Probably not, because none of you reacts, right? This is stuff you already know, right? This is kid stuff. If you actually toss a coin 10,000 of times, the end result will be pretty big, 1,000 times, will be pretty long, an even distribution of heads and coins. So why are we all estimating? Counting items is just enough. Or estimating them all at 1, that helps too, right? So you don't have to estimate all these items anymore. That saves a lot of time. All these refinement sessions that you have in Scrum, you can actually get rid of that. Because you're only going to pick up the next item, work on that item, and then pick up the next one. That saves a lot of time. Also, remember, you can stop doing projects now. So what's the next? The next is even shorter cycles. So if you do Scrum or another Agile approach, who has sprint lengths of 2 weeks? Don't be afraid. 3 weeks? 1 week? Less than 1 week? Good. I like you already. The thing is, these cycles are sort of arbitrary as well. They make you work in small projects. If you look at Scrum, this is my own handwriting, this is Scrum explained. I can actually explain this to you in like 10 minutes, and then you can all do the exam. So you'll become a certified Scrum Master. It's a simple exam, you can all take it. Who of you is a certified Scrum Master? Oh, have to be careful. Anyway, so basically what happens in Scrum is you take the backlog, and at the start of a sprint, you pick up a bunch of items, you break them down into tasks. Usually, not everybody does that, by the way. And you break them down in tasks, you start estimating, right? So I just told you don't do that. So here's like 3 items. Good, right? And then you say, we have this sprint, and at the end of the sprint, we are going to deliver the potentially shippable product increment, whatever that may be. That makes you responsible to give off commitment. Also, it sort of makes you responsible to figure out an exact number of items that you can actually work on in your sprint that make up something useful for your customer. You know how hard it is to do that every 2 weeks? To figure out a bunch of stuff that you can actually work on exactly within 2 weeks and finish all of them and then deliver something to the client. It almost never happens, right? That is why I'm saying stop doing that. And then, of course, there's people who are trying to do enterprise Agile. Who of you does? Who of you is in an Agile transformation? Oh, good, none of you. Yeah, only, sorry. It sucks, basically. Yeah, Agile wasn't meant for that. What does that mean, enterprise Agile? Who does that? Well, it's the guys in the suits, right? It's not us. We just want to write code. And then people invent new frameworks. Yeah. You know, the basic thing in here is called an Agile release train. You know where trains run on? They run on rails, right? How flexible is that? Anyway, if you're not a huge company, don't do this, please. And then you might say, oh, so what else do we do? What do we do? Well, you could do Spotify. Everybody, who's copying the Spotify model? Oh, good. Only a few. Well, it's a nice model. That is, if you're Spotify. Spotify is a company that streams music. Who of you is in a company that streams music? I thought so. Neither am I. I don't even know how to do that, right? And also, Spotify is a company that grows really, really fast, right? They went from like 3 people to 3,000 in 3 years, something like that. And then you need models like this. It's not a bad model, actually. It's actually a pretty good model. But the thing is, never stop thinking, right? Implement your own ways of doing this stuff. Try and make your cycles as short as possible. It doesn't mean copy somebody else's model and it will work. It doesn't. Scrum copied out of the book doesn't really work. You need all the XP features from that, all the XP principles, all the techniques. Yes, you need them explicitly. Spotify is a good model. Take the parts from that you can use. Don't just copy it, because you are not Spotify, right? That is, unless you are working for Spotify, in that case, you're fine to do this model. Basically, right? So take from each of these models what is useful to you. But don't overdo it, because all the ceremony you add to your model you are never going to get rid of it anymore. It's the same with architectures, right? I saw architectures, Java basically, at big banks that had 11 layers of abstraction. 11 layers, right? What do you do with 11 layers? I don't know. How many layers do you have? Does anybody have more than 4? Oh, good. You don't dare to raise your hands, right, if you have more than 4. 11 layers. The problem is, if you start writing code to that, you can never get rid of them anymore, because refactoring that stuff is a horror. It's the same with agile approaches, right? As soon as you add all this stuff, you are never going to get rid of it. So don't add the stuff you don't really need. And you don't need that much. I'll show you in a sec. The thing is, I don't really care if agile scales. Because if it doesn't work in a 5-person team, how are you going to make that work in the whole company? Let's please just start doing it in small teams first, before you are raising the bar, right? Not the other way around. To give you an example about these cycles, here's a burn down graph. You all have seen burn down graphs, right? Yeah? This one is actually basic from a team. So they estimated all the work into story points or whatever they did, put it on the burn down chart, and then draw the line. So we need to be finished there at the end of the month. They didn't, right? And here's the second one. They didn't finish. The third one, they didn't finish. Of course, this was a project in Belgium, I know. Fourth one, fifth one, sixth one, they never finished, right? To them, the whole Scrum model failed. Well, it didn't, basically. And the project manager, there was a project manager, he said, you guys suck at estimation. You guys suck at your work. And they all got very much demotivated and quit. And then the project manager hired a whole bunch of people from India, and still the project didn't succeed. So it was terrible, right? So this whole model of these sprints and having to estimate that stuff, you don't have to go there. You could do it very simple. Stop sprinting. What do you mean stop sprinting? Are we going to go back to waterfall? No, you're going to move forward to doing individual items. Because that is exactly, that's a bit loud, what the Agile Manifesto says, right? It says to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. It doesn't say every 3 weeks. It says continuously. So you have to move up your cycle. You have to go into production faster. Because going into production faster is easier than going into production every 3 months or every half year. Because the delta between where you were and where you are now is very, very small. Look at Gmail. Gmail probably changes every day. You don't even notice it. I've been using that for 15 years. It just changes a bit every time to time. What's the difference? So go into production as fast as you can. Move towards continuous delivery. Stop doing sprints. Work item for item. Just Humble says, continuous delivery is an approach in which teams ensure that every change to the system is releasable and that we can release any version at the push of a button. My company is exactly doing that. Not because it's a great company, but just because they can, right? It's actually like you said, right? It's because they can. And they are moving into shorter cycles, into continuous flow. And the thing is, you have to do some work to that. You have to set up your pipelines. So this is one of our pipelines, as an example, right? It builds the stuff, it checks the code in SonarQube, it puts it into a Docker container, and it does this for all our applications and all our components. Deploys it to staging, runs some tests, runs the scenario test, deploys it to Amazon, runs some more tests, deploys it into the acceptance environment. People can look at it, run performance tests, puts it into production automatically. The whole process for every change we make to the code, and we do that all the time, is actually taking like, what is it, like 5 minutes? That's it, and then it's in production. That is cool, right? To be able to do this, you need to do something else. You need to automate all your tests. And we all like writing tests, right? Who of you does write unit tests? Oh, that's good. It should be everybody, by the way. Everyone should do this. It's not optional. This is mandatory stuff. If you move into shorter cycles, if you move into microservices, you have to test everything automatically. That means, by the way, that you have to teach your testers how to code. We are doing that at the company I work for. The testers are all reading a book called Java for Testers. Isn't that cool? And you're the guys who have to teach them that. Because you already know, right? You can help them out doing this. And it'll improve, right? You also have to create immutable infrastructure. That means machines, which are also sitting in the cloud, as soon as they don't work anymore, just kill them, throw them away, install a new one, run the script, done, right? Takes a couple of minutes, and you have new infrastructure. Don't waste your time maintaining all this stuff, patching all this stuff, like you would do at a kitten. I had a kitten picture in the desk, right? It also means that you are now able to move beyond Scrum, beyond Agile, beyond basic Agile stuff, right? Things like this. Have a one-day cycle. Lose the stand-up. I would be happy with it. Just talk to each other. Pick something up from the backlog or the roadmap, whatever you have. Write it, demonstrate it, go home, or deploy, go home, and do the next thing tomorrow again. That's it. As simple as that, right? And if you do that, you can't stop doing projects. So the next thing is even smaller teams. So if you think your team is small, my guess is that the teams will be smaller than they are now. So usually they're now like 7 plus or minus 2, as Scrum dictates, with a Scrum Master and whatever, a team lead or whatever you might have, and a bunch of developers, which could also be testers, but it only says developers in the Scrum guide. That's okay, right? And they have to be autonomous these days, right? This is at Zappos in the US. I'm not really sure this culture would fit me, although I'm slightly crazy. It's a bit off, I would say, and it gets worse, right? You know what this is? This is my girlfriend's leg. In a job interview at a very large retailer in the Netherlands. It's not IKEA, by the way. This is terrible, right? This is overdoing it, I think. She didn't get hired, by the way. And the thing is, if you want to move people into being more autonomous, it's way out of their comfort zone. And it's very hard to get there. Nobody knows how to do this. Managers will say, well, it's just like drawing an owl, right? First you draw 2 circles, and then you draw the rest of the owl. It's that simple. It is, right? And the thing is, what we discovered over the years is that less rules work. This is a very big crossroad in Amsterdam. They did an experiment in 2016. I think it's still that way. They removed all the stop signs, all the traffic lights, all the markings on the ground. You know what happened? People started communicating. I had to cross the road. I have to look into the cars, into the drivers of the cars, like if they see me. Communicating takes place. People start to improvise. They start to be creative in how to cross the crossroads. Instead of just waiting for the stop sign, looking at the phones, oh, it's green, cross the road, car comes in, bang, right? It improves, and there's less rules. And you can do this in your teams as well. So everything, all the rules, just make sure whether you actually need them or not. Traditionally, you have teams like this, right? Different disciplines separated. And then we got to Agile, and Agile says basically, oh, you know what? We'll create multidisciplinary teams. And actually, the teams I've worked with over the last 5-6 years, they're actually changing again. They are actually moving into what I actually started referring to as micro teams. It's just a big pool of people working on a single backlog. And what will happen is they will start working automatically on themselves without managers saying, oh, you work with him, you work with her, etc., etc. They'll pick up an item, work in a group of 2 or 3, sometimes maybe 4, work on that item, and when it's finished, move to the next one, change teams again. It's sort of a dynamic way of working together without any interference whatsoever. They make up most of their own rules, right? And this changes behavior a lot. This sort of causes to have much more responsibility in the teams. And you have to allow them to learn every day. Make them go to conferences, right? Make them go to training courses, see online stuff, etc., etc. Challenge them to do new stuff. Challenge them to do, I don't know what, Kotlin maybe, instead of Java, or next to Java, or next to TypeScript. And it makes you stop doing projects. Now the last part of this talk is about smaller components. Again, smaller stuff. Now this is the hard part, right? It's where we build monolithical applications. So I know many of you are moving to smaller and smaller components, just trying to get away of, I'll skip Etsker, sorry about Etsker, but this is way too much. It's that if you have enough time, as a team, you will start rewriting stuff already. Everybody does that, by the way, right? You all recognize this, do you? You don't? You just keep on writing to the old code base until it breaks? Nobody does that. You'll start changing stuff, right? And eventually you'll move into microservices. Now the problem with microservices is not that it's not a great architecture. It is a great architecture. I've been doing this for a couple of years now already, and it's good stuff. It's also highly complicated. Look at Martin Fowler's short definition. Right? This is the short definition. I wonder if he has a longer one as well. It makes you take care of a whole lot of things, like continuous delivery, like automated deployment machinery, a bare minimum of centralized management, different programming language, a lightweight communication mechanism, just like HTTP is already, right? There's lots of stuff to take into account. And there's always the discussion between, are we going to build a monolith, a Swedish monolith, or are we going to build microservices, right? And the thing is, it depends, right? So that's my only quote from Scrum. It's like, it depends. If your monolith is still structured quite well, as this one is, you're fine. You can still continue to move with this code base for a couple of years. Make sure you test everything automatically. Even if it's not already automatically tested, start doing that, right? And otherwise, if you build new stuff, please build it into new architectures, right? Build it into microservices. Or build it into serverless computing. Who of you is already doing this? It's not serverless, by the way. It is computing, but it's on somebody else's server, right? Just like microservices usually run. They can get smaller and smaller. And the thing is, with smaller code blocks, they're easier to write. Most of the microservices that we have at the company I currently work for are around 200 lines of code. That is maintainable. That is testable stuff, right? So if you've got everything in place, then you can actually build really fast in very, very small pieces. Small pieces means that you can put them into production easily, right? Fast in their own pipelines, etc. And you can move. Oh, by the way, you have to remember that this is still distributed computing, right? And distributed computing is hard by definition. Martin Fowler's first law of distributed objects says, do not distribute your objects, and he's right. But the thing is, there are no other architectures anymore than distributed architecture. People do this. So there's two things about microservices. It actually makes writing them easily, deploying them really fast, but the whole stuff you need to set up makes it harder, right? Still, it's moving in the right direction. It's moving towards small stuff. It's also moving you to go beyond doing projects. Because if you can deliver small pieces of software every day into production, whether that's micro applications or microservices or everything that's in between, you can move them out all the way. Try to do this with a big monolithical, multi-million line of code base. It's very hard to do because even running a build alone might take you a couple of hours. Not like I'm running the full pipeline, 5 minutes, it's in production. So break down your code bases into smaller stuff. Whether you throw it in microservices or just more modular code, which you now can do with Java 9, right? It helps. Break it down into smaller stuff as well. So basically, some final thoughts. The thing is, we have never been in the complicated area, right? Do enough analysis, make it plannable. It doesn't work in this industry. And as we are picking up more speed, and even more speed, and even more speed, the whole metaphor of doing projects will break down even faster. So you have to move away from that, please. Because we are in the complex area, right? You have to probe, figure out where to go, take a step, go in a general direction, but do not plan for exactly that particular point. It changes behavior, right? So waterfall should have been long gone. Also Agile will slowly evolve into continuous delivery at most of your companies. Well, Probably not even slowly, probably really fast. It'll hit you like a ton of bricks, basically. And you will go faster and faster until you've all decided not to do projects anymore. And then you're at something that I refer to as the continuous culture. It's much more actually than what I just told you. Because if you start changing all this stuff, the whole behavior of your organization will change as well. Because if you look at HR, for instance, the company I work for has annual plans for the developers. One of the developers on my team at the start of 2017, he said, oh, I want to be better at Java 8. I want to do lambdas and stuff like that. After a couple of months, we moved to TypeScript. So where did he go with his annual plan? He had to throw it in the bin, right? You cannot do annual planning anymore in organizations that can change their behavior so fast. The same goes for the whole organization. Having an annual plan, a business plan that says, oh, we need to do this, have done this exactly by the end of 2017 is very unlikely in the IT industry. And almost everybody is an IT company these days, right? So, with that thought, there's only one thing to do. I got to Brunjurauer, which is the estate I talked about earlier in this talk. And I went up there, and you couldn't enter, you just could go to the gates. And apparently, it's now a micro farm. Now, isn't that coincidental, right? That's good. So, with that thought, I'm going to leave you. Have a good time at the rest of the conference. If you have any questions, I'll be here the whole day, probably drinking some beer, hopefully, as your beer is much better than ours. So this is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sander, for this great opening keynote. As we run a little bit over time, I just want to, möchte ich euch kurz hinweisen, gehe wieder aufs Deutsche, nutzt die Konferenz-App, da könnt ihr euch orientieren, Zeitplaner etc. von der Konferenz ist alles da. Falls es Änderungen oder Updates gibt, werden die da in Echtzeit quasi reingespielt. Und außerdem gebt uns Feedback auf alles, was ihr seht, auch durch die App. Ganz wichtig, sehr hilfreich für uns. Und natürlich möchte ich nochmal darauf hinweisen, wir sind wirklich sehr viele Leute hier. Die Konferenz spielt sich auf 3 Ebenen ab. Eins drüber, hier und eins drunter. Auch gerade beim Catering etc. verteilt euch. Wenn es an einer Stelle voll ist, guckt mal an andere Stellen. Alles klar? Damit wünsche ich euch einen wunderbaren Anfang der W-JAX und wir sehen uns später hier zur Mittagskeynote. Danke. Cool.